Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Removed Abilities, where I go back in time to look at champion abilities that were either straight up taken out of the game and replaced by something else, or abilities that were changed around to be functionally different back then compared to now. Gonna dive straight into this one with another 7, so let's get into it. This had to be one of my favorite ultimates of all time, and I was really sad to see it gone, but at the same time I can understand why they took it away because it was extremely broken, like super ultimate territory. Everyone knows Rezi is a diver assassin hybrid who specializes in going after one person, knocking them up, blasting them with their combo, and then using Void Rush to finish them off. The old Rezi though was more of a tank juggernaut who excelled in map control, tempo, and disrupting enemy teams. The main way she did that was through her old Void Rush. Present day Void Rush is a targeted finisher that logs onto an enemy she recently damaged, disappearing for 1.5 seconds before pulling a Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare at a target for massive damage based on their missing health. All things considered, it was a very good ability, albeit kind of a derpy looking one for what is essentially a land shark. Rezi's old Void Rush, however, was entirely different. After channeling for 1.5 seconds along with a blood-curdling scream, she dashed at lightning speed to one of her tunnels from global range. She also had a small amount of attack speed. Now, comparing the two ultimates, you might think to yourself the current Void Rush is way more threatening since it's a combat ultimate, but let's contextualize things a bit. One of the biggest dilemmas junglers face, more than even their laners, is deciding when to recall. In fact, junglers prefer to recall as little as possible because they want to exert as much pressure on the map as they can. Not only that, but the hallmark of a good jungler is how quickly and efficiently they can navigate around the map to get to where they need to be. Rezi is one of the best junglers at traversing the map thanks to a network of tunnels. Provided they remain undestroyed, she can get from one side of the map to the other in about half the time it takes most other junglers to. Not to mention, these tunnels can serve as both engage and escape tools, so imagine giving a jungler access to a global teleport that she can use to get to wherever the hell she wants to be. That's insane. Rezi can dig a tunnel, recall, use her ultimate, then go right back to where she just recalled. What makes Orin such a dangerous lane opponent is that he can power spike without having to recall just by chilling for 4 seconds out of combat. Rezi basically could do the same, albeit with a longer cooldown, but Void Rush was easily like top 3 best global ultimates. As devastating as the current Void Rush is, the old one was a godsend for tempo. Next ability, and this is another one of those ultimates that I really miss, Gallo's Idol of Durant. The easiest way I can describe it is that it's an infinitely better version of Nono's Absolute Zero. Gallo channels for up to 2 seconds, during which he gains 50% damage reduction and all enemies within a 600 unit radius are taunted, after which he explodes and deals magic damage to all enemies caught, increased by the number of basic attacks he took during that time up to a cap of 8 for 80%. This right here is also in the realm of super ultimate. Nono's ultimate is incredibly busted, but also incredibly unreliable in terms of damage since you can just dash out of it or interrupt him with crowd control. Now you can interrupt Gallo, but it's a lot harder since only people outside his radius can CC him. Everyone else inside it are taunted, so unless you do something like press W on Renekton or Q on Garen before he ults you, you have no way of stopping the channel, so it's a massive AoE 2-second taunt that also does big damage, and with a radius of 600, that's just enough to trap the majority of AD carries. Unfortunately, or rather I should say fortunately, Gallo was reworked before Sylas came out because oh my lord, if Sylas had this ultimate, everyone would pee their pants. Idol of Durant was one of those abilities that was only balanced by the fact that it was on Gallo, who didn't really have an easy way to get in as all he could do was walk up to you with Righteous Gust. But even on Gallo, it was a very effective anti-engage tool, instant cast time, so the moment the enemy team engaged on you, press R and your team would get a couple seconds to gather their bearings and launch a counteroffensive. In terms of design though, this would easily take a spot on a badly designed abilities video. Unless you had QSS or Cleanse, if you got caught in his ultimate you were pretty much f***ed. Like it or not, you were about to take over 1000 damage late game just by being in range of him. Comparatively, the current Gallo taunt, the one attached to his W, is a lot more balanced and fair. I'm all for explosive ultimates, but there has to be an element of counterplay. As fast as it looks, you can easily react and flash out a Malphite ultimate, but with Gallo, it's an instant taunt, so if you're anywhere near him, you have to face the very big possibility that you're gonna explode. It wasn't the most fairly designed ultimate, but I do miss it. One of my favorite videos from MyMacutie was where he went full AP Gallo and the enemy Ezreal or whoever the AD carry was just couldn't play the game. This is the hill I'm gonna die on. 2016 Cutie was peak League of Legends. Next ability is Irelia's old E, Equilibrium Strike. I touched on this in my old Champions video, but this ability was also one of those questionably designed ones. See, the premise with her E was that she dealt magic damage to a target and slowed them for 1 to 2 seconds. If her percentile health was equal or less than that target, they would get stunned instead. Not actual health, percentile health. Let's say she had 10,000 HP versus an enemy Caitlyn with 2,000. Obviously there's no universe where she has 10 grand in health, but bear with me. If she was at 9,000 health, she would have 90% of her total health, which for Caitlyn would be 1,800, but since they had the same percentile, she would stun Caitlyn despite still having 7,000 more HP than her. I think the idea they were trying to go with for Irelia was that Equilibrium Strike was supposed to be stronger when she was at a disadvantage. That was the notion they had with her given her story back then, where I believe she fought like 1,000 dudes by herself. For example, Ionian Fervor made her stronger when outnumbered by giving her a metric ton of tenacity. So they were trying to do the same with Equilibrium Strike, but in practice, it was one of the easiest point and click 2-second stuns in the game. You people think Renekton Empowered W is dumb, this move was absolute bullshit, since it basically let her play as an assassin. Like I said, she could be 4k HP versus a 1,500 HP squishy enemy backline, but so long as her percentile health was lower than theirs, she could stun them and then burst them down with the QW and ultimate. This also made it so when fighting her, you had to burst her down as fast as you could, since if you were at half HP and she was at half HP, if she got that stun on you, you were basically dead. Questionable ability design to say the least. Not the most egregious thing in the game, but I swear, there were so many times where I got stunned even though it looked like her HP bar was fuller than mine. She was the bane of all squishy backline champions to say the least. Well, she still is, I guess. Speaking of terribly designed abilities, I think we can all unanimously agree that Khazix's Void Assault had to be one of the worst ideas Riot ever envisioned in the history of this game. During the Assassin update in Preseason 7, they wanted to add more outplay potential and nuance to the class, and their definition of outplay potential for Khazix was by taking away the enemy team's outplay potential. In version 6.22, when you evolved his Void Assault, he would gain Adaptive Cloaking, where upon entering a brush, he would go invisible for 2.5 seconds, lingering for 1.5 seconds after exiting, and with a 10-second per brush cooldown. It's important to note that this was invisibility, not stealth, meaning he couldn't be detected by control wards. If you guys thought Evelyn's perma-camouflage was obnoxious, imagine Khazix, a high-speed, instant burst assassin with perma-invisibility. Mobi Boots and Ghost Blade plus Void Assault's movement speed itself, the guy could run from brush to brush without you being able to see him, and there were so many brushes around the map, he would be invisible for up to like a minute. Don't forget, he still had 2 active uses of Void Assault on deck. This was a passive. I actually distinctly remember when this change happened. Khaz pick rate went from like 10 to 15% to 25%, and he had a 57% win rate. It was crazy how broken this upgrade was. Junglers are literally made or broken by how fast they can navigate around the map and, more importantly, not be spotted while doing it. With Khazix, it didn't matter how many pink wards were around the map, you could just run around and show up anywhere with no detection. I never want to see this again, ever. Stealth is, and has always been, a really degenerate mechanic in my opinion. Being invisibility was only adding insult to injury. Even if they made active cloaking a camouflage to where nearby units can still see him, Khazix is a very fast champion mobility-wise. Evelyn is balanced by her lack of mobility. She has to slowly walk around the map, whereas Khazix had like perma 600 movement speed, so he was basically Shadow Assassin King before Shadow Assassin King. You know, now that we're halfway into this is starting to sound like a badly designed abilities episode. You know what, if we're talking about Khazix, we might as well bring up his arch rival, Rengar. Unpopular opinion, I kind of liked the Swim Q, but it was obvious why it didn't work. During the same time Khazix got Adaptive Cloaking, Rengar's Savagery was changed from a basic attack to a double slash ability, no longer applying on-hit effects, but in exchange gaining the ability to deal AoE damage, and I believe it had comparable output to Savagery, but on multiple targets. Conceptually, this wasn't a badly designed ability if we isolate it in a vacuum, but it was bad specifically on his kit. By itself, it had rather generous area coverage and allowed him to place less emphasis on assassinating one person and not only fight more comfortably in 5v5s, but it was also buffed to his clear speed. Not to mention the 4-second flat cooldown would go down to like 2.4 at 40% CDR, giving him really solid DPS, and with numbers like that was a very high damage ceiling. So, what was the issue here? The issue was that it made Rengar feel kind of clunky. If memory serves, and again, it was like a long time ago so I might be forgetting it, Rengar's Q had a fixed cast time, which meant that no matter how fast you got in terms of movement speed and attack speed, his Q would be exactly the same. Rengar was the poster child of instant one-shotting. If you watched any Rengar montage back in the day, people could do literally 3 Qs in half a second. The moment you saw him jump at you, it was a frame 1 gray screen. So to go from a super speedy one-shot assassin to this Q is a very awkward change to swallow for most Rengar players. What's funny though is that he had an even bigger spike in win rate than Khazix. I believe his win rate went to like 60% and he had a 75% ban rate, arguably a contender for one of the most broken champions in the game, especially since his W used to be a short-lasting Olaf ultimate. Like along with the cleanse, he would be immune to crowd control for a second or two after. They really didn't give a damn about balance back in the day. I don't know, I like this Rengar because I'm more of a fan of Bruiser Rengar than full armor penetration one-shot, so when I played it, I went Black Cleaver full tank. It was a lot of fun. One more theory I have of Rengar's Q being reverted is that around the same time, 2 other champions got a similar type of 2-hit combo with a wide slash followed by a forward thrust, Xin Zhao and Sejuani's W. So maybe they thought there were too many attacks like this, especially on junglers, and wanted to switch things up. Rengar definitely struggled to clear due to being most a single target, but I think the changes they made to Battle Roar alleviated that for him, so they brought back his old Q. 2 more abilities to go, let's talk about a really old one, Sion's Cryptic Gaze. Very simple, but one of those, if this was on a champion in the current day, it would be nerfed to Kingdom Come type abilities. Cryptic Gaze was a point-and-click 550 range, 1.5 second stun with 300 base damage and a 90% AP ratio. That was it. With 40% CDR, 8 seconds went down to 4.8, so every 5 seconds you had a ranged point-and-click stun, and this was a ranged projectile, meaning you could use this in neutral as opposed to Pantheon or Briar's point-and-click stuns where you're forced to fight. Most Sion players went AD to abuse his sheer lifesteal and AD on his Z and ultimate, but on occasion you would sometimes see people go full AP Sion and just Q spam on you over and over again. Usually with neutral poke tools like Mordekaiser Q, Pantheon Q, Aatrox Q and such, you're close enough to where if your lane opponent wants to strike you back, they can, so you're taking a risk. But with Sion's Q, nope. Even if the Jax or whoever wanted to jump in on you, that 1.5 second stun was enough time for you to just walk away. Actually, while we're on that, I suppose I can talk about Sion's W. It was a 10-second shield on an 8-second cooldown. Although don't be confused, the cooldown doesn't begin until after the shield expires, so you couldn't have a permanent shield up. It also had 300 base damage and a 90% AP ratio, so you just press W, walk up, and Q them. If they were stupid enough to jump at you, not only would they be stunned on arrival, but you could explode the shield and do 600 base plus 180% AP in 2 hits. That was defensively. You could also just walk up to them, Q to stun, then walk up and explode W before walking away. By the way, it used to be a 2-second stun and 100% AP ratios on both Q and W respectively, and though this was back in I think beta, Cryptic Ace's max stun time used to be 2.2 seconds on a point-and-click ranged ability. Sion is definitely one of the champions of all time, and I'm glad they reworked him because that right there would be awful to fight in this day and age. Okay, last ability of this video will be Talon's old E, Cutthroat. A 700 range point-and-click dash that slowed his target for 0.25 seconds and caused him to deal increased damage to them for the next 3 seconds. The 0.25 second slow was meant to be for Talon's old passive, Mercy, which made him deal 10% bonus damage to enemies that were slowed, stunned, rooted, or suppressed, giving him just enough time to land one basic attack, which in tandem with his old Noxian Diplomacy would do a crap ton of damage. Just looking at Cutthroat, it seems kind of underwhelming, doesn't it? 18-second cooldown at rank 1 that only goes down to 10. And though it is a point-and-click blink, slowing them for only a quarter of a second and increasing damage by 15% seems like old Prowler's Claw on an ability. That might actually be what Prowler's Claw was inspired off of, but would you believe me if I said this ability was one of the most despised moves in the game? How so? Cutthroat used to silence for a second, not slow. A 1-second silence may not sound as threatening as a 1-second root, but there's a reason silences aren't very common in League. While rooted, you can still use items and summoner spells. Even while stunned, you can use summoners. But if silenced, you can't use items, summoners, or abilities. And you know, being an assassin, 1 second is all he needs to 100 to 0 you. The guy's literally designed to kill you instantly. So you have a point-and-click 700 range blink, not even dash. So Poppy and Talia can't do anything about that. Silence. Old Talon was a stat checker in every sense of the word, since you literally couldn't do anything but take that damage. A straightforward EQW ultimate and boom, dead. It was similar to Gallo, where if you were simply in range of him and his abilities were off cooldown, you would explode just like that. I know everyone hates Talon for being able to run around all over the place and parkour over walls, but trust me when I say the old version would have been way worse to fight. And I wasn't even around when Izzy used to silence, I just know how dangerous a 1-second silence is on an assassin. You can't even use Zhonya's or Exhaust, you're just dead. Okay, episode 4 of Removed Abilities complete. As always, if you have any specific abilities you'd like me to go over, you're more than welcome to leave them in the comments. We still have plenty to talk about, so look forward to an episode 5, 6, 7, 8, 1000, and so on. For now though, if you enjoyed the video, it would be awesome if you left a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my previous episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.